Thanks, Coach. My name's Tommy Young. I'm the girls basketball coach at Harwood Union High School. I took over the program 4 years ago. I've been asked to speak today about how to rebuild a program. My first year there, we were 0-20 and probably the worst team in the state. And after 4 years, we ended at the cusp of a state championship with the finals being postponed last spring due to COVID. So I hope you enjoy my talk and my presentation. And thanks for asking me to speak.
As I said, my name is Tommy Young, and I've been coaching now for 4 years at Harwood Union High School with the girls program. When I started, I'd coached previously the boys JV program with my longtime friend and colleague Ray Drake being the varsity coach, and did that for 10 years, and then took time off to be with my own children. And then Sue Duprat, the former AD of at Harwood, asked if I would think about getting back into coaching. The concern was the girls' program numbers were getting lower and lower, and they were concerned that they may not have a program if it continued. So I decided to get back into it. I outlined a 4 year plan for her to show her kind of what my goals and thoughts were, and felt that we could compete in 4 years. And I think the proof is in the pudding. So what I hope to do today is to kind of talk to you about what steps I took to kind of get to where we are right now. So I hope you enjoy. First, what I wanted to do is talk to some people that were doing it well, whether it be in basketball or other sports. So, ironically, it started with a presentation at the VBCA clinic 4 years ago. Uda Otley was asked to present and speak about her program, and she kind of had this really great document that kind of showed how every level was working on certain things and that they were all connected. So by the time they got to the high school, some of the work was done, and then she was fine tuning things and then adding more of what they wanted. She graciously spoke with me after her presentation too. I'm sure she gets bugged by a lot of people, but I didn't hesitate to go up and ask. And just I wasn't interested in per se of what exact offense, what exact defense, because I knew my program wasn't where she was. But I wanted to know what she did to keep continuity from the lowest level to the highest level. And so that kind of started my thinking. And I took her document and I went home and I started working on a scope and sequence for my program. And I will include that as an attachment in this document, in this video, so that you could access that if you wish. But what I wanted to do was start with like the youngest grades, first and second, third and fourth grades, and kind of show what each age group, the skill level stuff they should be working on. And as they progress through, I also wanted to show how you don't continue on to the next until those are mastered, because they build upon each other. But I wanted to show how we were still working on some of those same skills from the beginning, even at the high school level. So we're still working on passing, we're still working on shooting, we're still working on cutting and setting screens all the way through. So they don't think that it's just, well, we'll do that later, we do that later. No, we do it all the way through. So when they get to high school, we fine tune it and they can be at their best. So the scope and sequence kind of offered the first structure for my program. It allowed me to, as I was talking with coaches, to kind of show what we were doing and what my expectation was going to be. So then the second thing was I took over control of picking my coaches. Um, I pick all my feeder coaches. The first and second grade is usually parents of like one of the players. And I just, I talk with them and see how they're going. But it's kind of like a little bit of a tryout for them to see if I want to continue having them work with kids as they move up through. And then I got involved. We had a Waterbury Duxbury program, and we had a Mad River Valley program. Those are all the towns and schools that feed into Harwood. And what I wanted to do was get them to be a joint program so that the kids started playing together. And that took a few years. That actually took the start of my 4th year to fully get everybody vested in. But I started with other things first to get the idea going. Um, so then I also talked, to other coaches. As I started coaching, Billy Wagner at Virgins has been fantastic in a sense. I think he started in the same place as I started when he took over his program. And, he's just been a really good ear to Ben when we meet before games via email. We've talked a lot at AU games, and I've run a lot by him and learned a lot from our discussions and conversations. I also reached out to just a variety of other coaches in our Capital League, before games. I mean, a lot of them would hear what my vision was, and I would talk about, where I wanted to go and what our plan was. So even though we were at the beginning in many phases, there was a big picture thing going on, and I think people knew right away that, we were going to start making a turn because we had a plan in place. And then I also spoke with non-basketball coaches. Our high school at the time had a field hockey coach who was phenomenal, and she just got the most out of her teams every year. She won several state championships, and I knew how to coach boys. I had done it before. I never coached girls at a high school level, and to be honest, I didn't know how to talk to high school girls when I was in high school. So I knew I was going to have some challenges. So I went to her and said, like, what's the biggest difference? Like, she's coached both. She had high school boys, and she talked to me about what girls need. So it was good to get input from experts that aren't necessarily basketball coaches, but just understand how to work with a female high school team. And because there are some things you do a little differently. But it was great insight, and it really helped me kind of stay focused with that. So I knew the first thing I wanted to do to show that there was, a new vision for the program, and to start getting people to look at Harwood girls basketball in a different light is I had to create a brand. And I thought that was going to take several things. So first thing I did is I was able to find a donor. And the first year she gave me like $4,000 or $5,000. And I got apparel for the girls, varsity team and JV, sweatshirts, and I was just giving them out to all the players that were around town. I was very fortunate that way. I also used some of the money to purchase AAU jerseys so that kids wouldn't be charged, and I'll get more into that in a minute. But we had the Highlander name everywhere. I mean, I was wearing apparel. We were 0-20 that first year, and I'm still walking around with my sweatshirt, proud as could be, wanting people to see, think Harwood basketball, think that there's a team, there's some girls playing, and just start to get that mentality out there in our community, because everybody knew about hockey and everybody knew about soccer and the boys basketball, but we needed to get the girls caught up. We needed some recognition and some face to it. So that was kind of the start, was to start to create a brand. Then I created a team store. I got parents to want to buy stuff. And again, just flooding places with the idea of seeing Harwood girls basketball, seeing that name. Whenever we did clinics for the younger kids, we'd give out little basketballs, whatever we could, just to make sure that they were having something that had that slogan on it, or that name on it. Um, so that was the first part. Then I was fortunate. I would start with AAU, got the AAU uniforms going, and then the second year, I was actually given another $30,000. And again, I was very fortunate. I had one person who just wanted to see Harwood girls basketball go in a new direction and have some success. And the first thing I did is I bought all new glass backboards in the gym. So that way, not only did the girls benefit, but the boys did too. But when they were on a side basket, I didn't want them using a piece of plywood with a box painted on it. I wanted legit baskets, so they knew when they were practicing, it was for real. It was to get better. It was to do it right. So it's just that mentality of walking in and having the right equipment in place to feel good about what they're doing. Um, at that point, I also, again, bought more merchandise to get kids. I got new warm ups for the team, new warm ups for JV. We got travel suits, all the things just to start creating that sense of this is our team, this is who we are, we're similar, we're together, and kind of getting that momentum. Um, and then what I slowly did was turn into Mini Metro a few years after AU, and again, started use some money to get some things going that way as well. But the brand was the big thing. Using local papers, thanking kids for coming to clinics, taking pictures, getting that out. I would make sure that I, talk to kids about basketball. I'm a teacher in the elementary school, so that helped that I could connect with kids that way. I used a lot of recess duties to get kids excited about basketball. Um, but just trying to just get the idea, the concept of girls basketball being important and being big and being a big deal out into the community as we started to build with our own play. We did it, kind of simultaneously to keep things balanced. So the feeder program I knew was the place to start. As much as I wanted to have success right away with um, my high school team, I knew that true success wasn't going to happen until I had success with my younger kids, in a sense of success, meaning they had a structure in place, they had a focus, and they were working on skills that they would need as they moved up through the ranks. So when they got to high school, we were refining things instead of teaching skills. Instead of introducing skills, we were reviewing skills. So it was a structure that needed to start being laid in place so that I could start building and start changing the direction of how the program was not only run but the success it had. So I started with a scope and sequence, and I think I talked a little bit about that. But the scope and sequence for me was I wanted to create a document that no matter what level you were coaching at in my program, you kind of knew what the expectations were, what the goals were. If you think about the 1, 2, and sometimes the 3, 4 coaches, you tend to pick people who are just good with kids that can manage a group because we know how chaotic a 6 o'clock practice for a third grader can be when there's 12 of them in the gym or 15 of them. So I wanted them to have some kind of outline goals, ideas, objectives of what we were trying to accomplish. And then what I did is I just created a resource bank. I'd get as many resources as I could, put them in Google Drive, and let them have access. So if they wanted to work on rebounding, or they're like, oh, rebounding is a skill we're working on, so they could go and they could find different level drills to do. So it was all in one spot, so that they could almost create a practice plan even at the third and fourth grade levels. It wasn't just going in and doing a couple of skills and then and scrimmaging the rest of the time. There was true structure being offered and resources to support that structure. So the scope and sequence, it gave the coaches a chance to kind of see what we're doing all the way up through, how their work is important, how if they're trying to do these skills, but they look at what the previous years or level skills were, and the kids can't do that they should go back to that first and build on that and then move to this. But it showed how it was all connected. Which a lot of coaches really gave good feedback on that. They liked that was available. Then the other thing I would do that first year was I'd bring coaches in and run clinics where the players could work with their team on a Sunday, and I could run a coaches clinic and show them why we're doing certain drills or why the importance of the technical parts of the drills that they're working on. Why it was important to have your feet doing this or your head doing this or your hands doing this. So it gave us a chance for free clinics to their coaches, and the participation was high, and I think it helped kind of keep them understanding what we were trying to accomplish and give them strategies for accomplishing it. So after I had that scope and sequence and got that out to everyone, I looked at my school program / rec programs from first grade through sixth grade. What's interesting is, Waterbury Duxbury had their own first through sixth grade, and then seventh and eighth grade was at Crossbrook Middle School. And then they joined us for high school. And then the Valley had fifth, sixth grade, a couple, 3, 4 things, but nothing formal. Fifth, sixth grade, then they do seventh, eighth at their own middle school at Harwood, and then join as a freshman in the high school program. So it wasn't until ninth grade that all my players for that year were finally getting a chance to play together. And I saw that as a huge obstacle and one I wanted to change. And I don't know how it is in the towns you live in, but there's a lot of control and power that you have to kind of finesse when you're trying to change things. I knew there's a natural divide, whether it's positive, negative, between the Waterbury Duxbury towns and the towns in the valley. There's some things that just cause a division. And I knew I just wasn't going to be able to say, all right, here's what we're doing, and everybody on board. So I found a way, like thought about a way, how can I control it myself? How can I offer something that I want, but it's in my complete control, and because I'm offering it, nobody can argue it. So I started with AAU, and AAU is a new concept. Spring basketball is a new concept, and AAU is Saturdays and Sundays, which is still tough, because it's a big soccer town, and we're a ski area, and especially the kids in the valley. The idea of giving up a Saturday and Sunday to not be on the mountain, but to be inside a gym was absurd, and and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. So what I did is I created three teams. I had a 5-6 team, a 7th, 8th grade team, and a high school team. And I invited players from, my high school team was obviously the high school players that are going to be coming back the following year. But then the 7th, 8th was a mix of both middle schools. And then the 5, 6 was a mix of anybody that I watched play during the season. I sent an invite out to, and we had tryouts. And it was new for parents. The idea of not just showing up and getting equal playing time, having to try out, all these things were new. Having to pay for basketball, other than like the typical $50 rec fee. So to pay for tournaments and things like that. So it was a new concept, but we had enough to field the three teams. And, that first year was tough, but we won one game probably out of 60. I remember my 8th grade team, my 7th and 8th grade team won our first game in our program's history for AAU. And they celebrated like they'd won, game 7 of the NBA Finals. And it was cool. It was cool to see. But what happened during that first year was I went to everything. I went to practices. I went to games. Thankfully I have a wonderful wife who's very supportive in this endeavor and knows that what I'm going to do as far as commitment when I, take on something. So I could go to those things. And I also, both my girls at the time were both playing, so that helped as well. But there's a lot of time in gyms. There's a lot of times watching our butts get kicked. But it was the first time that we were taking a step towards playing a more formal, organized basketball. The big thing for me were the practices, and I made sure the coaches knew, hey, when you get these girls, they're giving extra time into basketball, and we got to make sure that we, utilize these practices to help them get better. It's not the games, it's what we're teaching them, the reps that we're giving them. So, it started with that. And then that had some success. And by the second year, we had started expanding our teams. And now we run a 5th grade team, a 6th grade team, a 7th and 8th, a 9th, and then a 10th through a 11th, or 10th for incoming 12th. And we have cuts at every level. And it's crazy the amount of basketball that's going on now just through AAU. So after I got AAU going, I wanted to then do mini metro. I still couldn't get the towns to say let's be one with our lower grade stuff. But I could feel a swing coming as far as commitment to basketball. So I started offering mini metro, and this was going to be a little bit harder because I was only doing 2 teams my first year, and I wanted to have competitive teams in a sense of it was people making an extra commitment, and I didn't want someone there just because their friend was doing it, but I didn't want to turn kids off because they weren't selected for that, to say, oh, I'm not playing basketball anymore because the coach doesn't think we're good enough. So we had tryouts, and I really, anything I do, I communicate with parents, and I feel it's a strength of mine, so they know exactly what we're doing. And, hey, this is where your kid currently stands, and we're not looking for the 12 best. We're looking for kids that really want to put the time in, that have shown commitment, that have a positive attitude, because it's going to be a long season. They're going to go from, beginning of September all the way through February break, and their school season built on top of that. So that was, again, a way to mix it to the Valley and the Waterbury Duxbury kids together and get some structure going and offer some more basketball, some more competitive basketball. At the same time, I didn't want to downplay the importance of a school team or the rec program, because the school team is our high school program. We're a school team. We're not a private club team. And I feel there's value in those teams, and I didn't want to take away from that value. So when we made our teams for the rec or for the middle school, we would balance them so that there was point guards on each team. We didn't make one like mini metro team and then everybody else on the other team. because you never know who's going to stick with the program, who's going to want to put the time in as they get older, who stays, who moves. We wanted to make sure that we kept people interested in playing, that they had a good experience. So by letting kids have each team having point guards, it guaranteed that we could get things set up. We could have someone controlling, so it wasn't just turnover, turnover, turnover. Um, did it not allow us to win some middle school tournaments? Yes, but who cares? Our numbers kept growing because what we were offering was fun and it was competitive. And when you could have your two teams play each other in a practice or scrimmage each other in a practice and be a 2 or 4 or 6 point game, you feel good about that. So I think that was a key to the feeder programs was, even though it wasn't like the elite stuff we were doing, we still made sure I was involved in making sure that we were balanced, that everything that was Harwood girls basketball was as much of a positive experience as it could be. Was it 100%? No. And I'm not going to sit here and say you do this and it works every time. There's trial and error on it, but that was our goal, and I felt like we were true to our goal, and we stuck with that. And I think that the results spoke or do speak for itself. Then last year, I finally got everybody to come around to the idea of let's make one league for the Valley and for Waterbury Duxbury. And I actually held the meetings in my classroom, so they'd have to come to me. And the Valley's a ski area, like I had said, and so they had ideas of like, well, we'll just do Friday night in-house games and clear the weekend so we can ski all weekend, and that's not going to help my program. So I knew I had some of that, to battle as we had our first meeting, and what I decided was it's going to be one of those difficult conversations again. And I said, look, some of you may want to do this, and you absolutely can, but it won't be the program I support, and I'm going to offer something over what you're trying to do. So if you want to just do in-house on Friday and mix it up, go ahead, do that, and then ski all weekend, and that's your right. And the schools will allow you to do that, but I'm going to create this, and it's time for us to do this. Sorry, there was a little hiccup in that, so I had to split the clip here and start the second part. So I think I just left off with the disadvantage. Um, so what happened is I held that meeting. Sorry for the kind of bobbling here, but I had the meeting and we got everybody to agree that we were going to create one league, and we were going to balance teams, and we weren't going to allow parents to say, well, these three need to carpool and they just happen to be the best three players, so they're going to be on the same team. We made practices happen pretty much at the same time so that they could carpool, and we also made sure kids from each town had someone else from that town, so there was some carpool possibilities there too. But it made some parents a little disappointed because this was for both boys and girls, but we didn't care. Like we were doing it for what was best for the feeder program. I was thinking for the girls, the boys coach was thinking for the boys program. So we created one league. We got uniformed, everything else, and it took a new direction, and it was fantastic. We had so many kids playing basketball that it's really starting now to change what kids do in the other seasons, and it's having an effect on some other sports, which is a positive in the sense that we're trying to create a basketball culture here, and I think we're well on our way. So by the end of the fourth year, I was able to just get everything, I should say the start of the fourth year, just get everything on the same page. On top of that, with the feeder programs, it's all about support for me, support from my JV coaches, my assistant coaches, and from the players. You would see me at a lot of different games. I was always calling the feeder program coaches, ask them how it's going, or if I saw a game, hey, I really like the way your kids were doing this. All kinds of feedback that was positive. If it was something I wanted to address, I always did that in person. If it was a coach yelling on the sideline, whatever it might be, I would do that in person. I never sent it as an email. I never called them. I wanted to see that it's genuine. I cared, and I wanted to come and talk about it. I also had the players, go to games, go to middle school games. They'd bring signs. They would cheer. Having the younger kids see the older kids there supporting them goes a long way. It creates that unity feel, that family feel, and a program feel. And then they could ref games, for the younger kids. Saturdays, if we didn't have stuff going on, players would ref. We also helped, like I said, clinics where players were connecting with younger kids and just just making that feel of one unit, one program. So this is kind of the way we kind of set up our feeder program. I think it's the most important thing I did to change this program was to be so heavily involved. What I feel is rewarding now is I can slowly start to pull back a bit. I'm not going to every game. I'm not trying to be at every practice. I'm not micromanaging because I have the people in place that I trust. I have feeder program coaches that I know are doing the right things. I think it's still important to get to some games, get to some practices so that you can make sure that they're still, doing the way you thought they were, who they are, I thought they were, but also just making sure that it's what I want, because ultimately it is my program and that's how I view it. Everything is a representation of what we're doing from the top, and it all trickles down. So I encourage you to take, if you're looking to change your program around, spend a lot of time on your feeder programs and make sure that's being done right. So next comes my high school program. And I certainly have a lot to say about that, but I'll try to stay focused here and keep it under the structure I was hoping to stay in. My first year, to give you some context, I couldn't even field a team. I think I had 6 kids coming back. So I started asking kids to play. To give you an idea, I had 2 kids starting that hadn't played since their freshman year, and to be honest, I don't think would make most JV teams. But it's what it was, and we had to start. Some other things to know is since I started coaching at Harwood for the girls, I've had nobody move in at the high school level, even the middle school level, to come in to play basketball. So the success that you see, again, like I think I talked about earlier, is it's based on girls' hard work. So it wasn't like, we're benefiting from, a family or 2 families that moved up that just changed the culture here. So my goal was the first year is to be positive. No matter what happened, it was going to be a positive experience. And if there was something that went wrong, I was going to put it on me every time. Because what I couldn't have is I knew it was going to be a tough year. I'll be honest, I thought it wasn't going to be better than it turned out record-wise. But I knew we were just going to have a lot of challenges. So the first year we went 0-20. Our closest loss was, I think, 26 points to, I forget which team. I don't even remember. Montpelier. I think it was Montpelier. That's right. And for the most, no one quit. Everybody kept coming back. 4-month season, you're 0-20. You get blown out in the first 4 minutes. Every team we played pressed us and went up by 20 points right away. Before we even done the first quarter. And the players kept coming. They kept coming back. And there was one time the entire year where I yelled at them, and that was at halftime of a game. It was the first time, whereas one of our rival schools, and I could see on the floor they were pointing at each other. They were blaming each other. And, we were probably halfway through our season, and I got in the locker room, and I kind of let them know how I felt about that. And they were a little surprised, I'd say, but that was the only time that I had to use that tone of voice. A bunch of them started crying. I'll admit I wasn't ready for that. And so I also was a little hesitant, I think, to go back there. But I didn't have to do it again because they got it. They got that we're making these mistakes not because we're not trying, not because we want to, but we're just not good enough. It's not their fault. As a senior and you're still learning to make a chest pass the right way and not have it go sailing over someone's head, that's not your fault. That's not you, being terrible, being a terrible teammate. So the first year, we finished. It's fine. Second year, I had some freshmen coming in that none of them made varsity, but I knew we were going to start having some success on the JV level. So I had them scrimmaging us because I thought they could beat us. And our second year, we won like 6 games. Again, kept it positive. Had all kinds of events. Started doing team dinners. Before a game, they'd come up to my house and I'd make dinners because I still had a group where they weren't the most outgoing socially. And so I would have to host these things to make them happen. And it was great. They started bonding just through these activities and these events. And we started just, learning that we could compete. The year before when I showed them the schedule at the beginning of the year, and I said, well, how do you girls usually do against these teams? And the one girl said, oh, we lose against, them. We lose against them. We lose against them. And she goes, we basically don't beat anybody, coach. And so, we started the first game, and we were up. We were up against a team that was surprised, and we lost in the fourth quarter. We ended up losing by, I think, like 6 points. But all of a sudden they realized, like, wow, we're pretty good. Like, we can compete. We're a different team. And they, the problem was they had never been in that situation, so they didn't know how to finish. But so I kept the goals minimal, basic stuff that I knew they could achieve in each game. Things that, hey, let's try to, make sure we can be equal in this category, or we can do this game. And we check in on those, and we'd celebrate those. We'd celebrate the small successes that I knew if we can consistently do that would turn into bigger successes. And so we finished the second year. Again, our goal was to get into the playoffs that year. We ended up facing, I think, the number one seed that year, U32. At the start of the playoffs, I had my 2 point guards went away for vacation because they never realized that there was playoffs, and they had already scheduled a family vacation before the season had started because it just wasn't something they thought about as basketball players. So, we lost our first game in the playoffs, but we got that experience of being in the playoffs. So we used that to build upon the following years. That summer we worked hard. We had summer league. We did all the things we're supposed to be doing. We would meet once a week on Sundays and do some workouts and some scrimmages. And kids attended camps. And, our third year we had some success. We beat teams that were shocked that we could beat them. We ended up tying the school record for most wins in a season. Our goal was to host a home playoff game that year. We not only wanted to make the playoffs, but we wanted to host a home game. And, most teams will say, oh, we want to get to the championship. But they designed that goal. There's something that they said, this is what we want, coach. We want to have that feeling of hosting a playoff game. And we want fans in the stands. And we were getting fans. We were starting to become kind of an event in town. So it was great that they could work towards that and achieve that goal. And we had a sellout crowd for our playoff game that year. But it had the town, all of a sudden kids were coming to the games, and people were talking to the girls in town, hey, you guys played a great game. I mean, I'd walk through town and felt like I was in Mayberry and I was Andy. It was kind of cool to just have, people coming up and talking about the girls and how hard they're working and how hard they're playing. But again, I always kept making sure I pushed them in practice, but I would make sure that they knew we always supported them. We had their back, and if they screwed up, I wasn't going to single them out in a game. I was going to do it in a time where they would respond and hear it. The other thing I did that year, prior to my third year, was, and I think one of the key things I've done in my program is I hired a female assistant coach. I wanted a female coach on my staff. I think it's important for girls to have a female voice, to have a female perspective, and to have conversations with a female that they may not have with a male. And I knew if we're going to start pushing for higher goals, I had to become a person that could just be a dink to them at times in the sense of pushing them, being hard on them. But they could go and vent to the assistant coach, and she could be the good cop all the time. And I was confident enough in myself to have that. I don't worry about, whether they like me or not. I feel like if I'm consistent and I show I care about them and I give them everything I can, that will come. So I never worry about let's hang out, let's be best friends. I just worry about being consistent. And so the start of the fourth year, we run our preseason stuff a lot like I do. I'm a first and second grade teacher, and I use this responsive classroom approach, and it's all about cooperative building of routines and rules and expectations and what it looks like. And to be honest, it's very similar to what you do with high school kids. So we had a retreat where we worked on the first day that we could actually have practice. We came up to the house, had dinner, and they worked in small groups, and they answered questions about what the expectations were, what their goals were for the year, what players should look like, what it should look like for what they should expect from assistants. What do they want to have fans do? What do they want the coach to do? All these things. What do they want from their captains? And I took all their ideas and we consolidated them into an approach, like kind of a document that guided us. And then we set our goals. And they wanted to get to Barry. They said we want to get to Barry, coach. The year before we got into the quarters, and Fairhaven crushed us. Again, I hadn't been in that situation, and I didn't feel like I prepared well enough, and my players felt like they didn't play well enough. It was a new thing, and we weren't ready for it. But we wanted to go in this year knowing that we were good enough to get to Barry, and that became our focus. So because we did all this work to develop goals, I could hold them two things. We started doing weight room training consistently after practices. We're fortunate enough to have a trainer that we can go down and he'll develop a plan. And so I'd take the 3 o'clock practice so that I could go right from 4:30 to 5:30 in the weight room. And we did a lot of cardio stuff. But in order to be a better team, we had to be better in the fourth quarter. We had to be more fit, more able to keep going when other teams started to break down. Sorry, the computer shut off again, but I think it's fine. So, when they complained about the weight room after a practice, I'd be like, hey, you guys said you wanted a state championship. I promised you I'd get you to Barry. If we want to cancel that goal, let's go change it. And I never had to say I'm doing it because I want you to do it. I'm doing it because you asked me to get you to a certain spot. So it kind of went back on them. Again, we did a lot of stuff outside of practice. We went to UVM games. We did all the things that most people do, dinners, parties, whatever it might be, celebrations. We went to school events together. And then, like I said, we hit all the middle school and younger kid stuff too. So just working with them and getting that stuff kind of in place. And what I was saying was, I wanted a female coach. Sorry, I kind of went off that, but I want to go back. I wanted a female coach on my staff, and I talked about that good cop, bad cop thing. And she, it's changed our team. It allowed us to take the next step. What I showed was, last year I wanted to take on defense in practice. And when you only have an hour and a half, you got to maximize your time. So I asked her to kind of take on the offense because I knew our defense could do some things that I wanted to see it do. And I feel like that's, something I'm good at. So she took on the offense in practice. So I was watching the defense. She was watching the offense. And she had a voice. But she also had the respect of the players because the players saw I respected her. And it's the same for my scout coach. He'd come in and run scout things to prepare the night before a game and run through what the other team was doing. And he had a voice too. And I think that's key. I think it's key to allow others to have voices in your program and to not make it all about you. I think one thing that anybody who's met me is, no, I'm very sincere, but I deflect from myself. It's always about everybody else. It's always about my girls, the other coaches, whatever it might be. I think having some humility will make you a better coach and allow your program to become better because it's about the program. It's not about you individually. So I think that kind of wraps up the high school stuff. I think we all have our approaches on what we'll do, but I think the key is, if you want to turn a program around, is you have to set what you want as a vision, and then you have to put in place what you think you need to do to get that vision, to accomplish those goals. And then you got to stick to it no matter what it looks like. And you got to, put in the time and you go to extra things, go to extra feeder program things and make yourself visible, make yourself accessible. It won't happen overnight, but it can happen in relatively short time. And success started for us, in year 2, really capitalized in year 3, and then exploded in year 4 with where we ended up. So I hope this is valuable and gives you some insight on that. To wrap things up, I think it's important, set your goals high. Like I said, when I walked into the AD's office to take the job, I set a 4-year goal. And what I said in the 4th year was going to be radically different than where we were at that current time. And I wasn't scared to say this is where we can be. And you're going to have your doubters. I certainly had a couple parents that didn't agree with, what I saw as potential. Thought we were pushing too hard, whatever it may be. But I always stuck to what I said I wanted to accomplish. And by doing that, I always made it about what the program was trying to do, what the girls needed to do, what we wanted to do as a team. So set your goals high, but then set a plan in place and stick to that place. Ignore the people that doubt it. If you feel like this is what you want to do, then do it. If this is the direction you feel it needs to go, then do it. But it's easy to doubt. Trust me, when I was losing by, one game we lost by 70 points to Stowe. And they just were putting it to us like you would never believe. I'll never forget that game. But I stuck to what I wanted to do. I didn't go home that night and tear it up and say, we're just not going to get better. That game made us get better the next time we went out because I didn't want to experience that again. So hold true to what you value and what you want to do. And when you do that, the results can be incredible. For us, it ended up with a berth to the state finals last year and a spot on ESPN. So enjoy this last clip of that, and thank you for listening.
This is the team from Fairhaven in Vermont, who was 23-0. They were looking for back-to-back girls' state basketball titles, and we salute them. But I want to tell you about who they were playing for the state title and show you my favorite picture of this whole thing. It's a little bit blurry, but it's perfect, and it's why sports are better than anything else. These are the Harwood High Highlanders, and the expressions on their faces tell the story because they just won a state semifinal, and they're headed to the first final in 40 years. When the seniors started on varsity, they went 0-20. Obviously, not very good. As seniors, this win made them 20-3, and they were headed to the state finals. Now, based on who they were playing, they would have had their hands full in that final with unbeaten Fairhaven, sure. So this image is who those seniors are forever, frozen in time and in victory. And there are worse things to remember about your senior night.
Thanks for having me speak today. I hope you found the information useful, and I look to seeing most of you hopefully when our season starts soon. Thanks, and on to you, Coach.